Coming soon to own on
YouTube
video
and Twitch.
DVD.
History's biggest lies you still believe. Now, a lot of these, Germany started World War One, Vikings wore horn helmets, Napoleon was short, Trojan horse, all yada, et cetera, et cetera. We're going to get straight into it.
Germany started World War I. For over a century we've been told that. Textbooks, Hollywood films and even the Treaty of Versailles itself hammered home the war guilt clause, blaming Germany alone. In reality, the war was the result of a continent-wide system of entangled alliances, secret treaties, imperial rivalries and reckless mobilization timetables that turned a Balkan crisis into a global slaughter. France actively sought revenge for the Franco-Prussian War and funded Russian mobilization. Russia was the first great power to order general mobilization, knowing it meant war. Britain had secret commitments to France while pretending neutrality. Serbia's Black Hand orchestrated the assassination of heir Archduke Franz Ferdinand, which led to Austria-Hungary declaring war on Serbia, which in turn led to a rapid escalation of conflicts between European powers. Germany certainly deserves blame, especially for the reckless blank check to Austria and the invasion of Belgium, but the idea that Kaiser Wilhelm single-handedly started the war was deliberate Allied propaganda that made the Versailles punishment seem justified. The Vikings wore horned helmets. This idea came from 1800s opera costume designers who added horns for dramatic effect. In reality, Viking helmets like the Järmundby were simple, practical pieces of armor.
This reminds me of like Rome gladiator helmets. But I could definitely see why though.
Often with a nose guard but never horns, since horns would have been dangerous and impractical in battle, giving enemies something to grab onto, and the horns could get stuck on tree branches during a raid. Archaeologists have found authentic Viking helmets confirming this. The confusion likely came from horned helmets discovered in Denmark that were over 3,000 years older than the Viking era. These were ceremonial, more like crowns than combat gear. Napoleon was short. Actually, Napoleon Bonaparte's height was around 5'6" to 5'7".
Nigga, he was still short. The fuck? Hell nah. He was still short. It's the fuck? It didn't. Oh, the average height was 5'7" back in the day, wasn't it?
In modern terms, average or above.
Nothing wrong with being short, but 5'6" is not the male average height. I tell you that.
Average for his era. The myth
Was it even that for his era? I don't know. You don't just get short allegations if you just short. I heard people say he was 5'3", 5'4". He might have been 5'5". He got the booster heels on. He 5'6" on a good day.
began because his recorded height used the old French inch system, which made him seem smaller when converted incorrectly. He also appeared shorter next to his tall imperial guards, adding to the illusion. British propaganda, especially satirical cartoons by James Gillray, exaggerated his size to mock him as a small, angry man. This
I don't know, man. 5'6" still a little on the short side.
false image eventually inspired the term Napoleon complex, linking short stature with overcompensating behavior based on a misunderstanding. The Trojan horse story.
Yeah, apparently, I never heard what the actual story was, but I heard the Trojan horse story wasn't actually true.
Told in Greek and Roman works like Homer's Odyssey and Virgil's Aeneid, describes the Greeks hiding inside a giant wooden horse to infiltrate Troy after a decade-long war. However, no physical evidence of such a horse has ever been found, and the detailed versions were written 400 to 800 years after the supposed event. Archaeology confirms Troy was burned in 1200 BC, but not by a wooden horse. The tale was probably symbolic or inspired by real tactics, siege weapons covered in horse hides, ships referred to as seahorses, or even an earthquake that broke Troy's walls.
If that's all the evidence they got, what's to say they didn't just break the shit in the battle? Oh yeah, a horse full of enemy soldiers is running at us. Well, let's not break this wooden horse to pieces. You know, why would I'm not saying it is true because it probably wasn't, but I'm just trying to play devil's advocate. And if this is all the evidence they got is, oh, we didn't find it, nobody's ever found it. Who's to say they didn't just destroy it? You know,
The Einstein failed math myth
he might have failed math in like fourth grade one time.
is untrue. In fact, Albert Einstein was a math prodigy, mastering algebra and geometry by age 12 and calculus by 15. The myth likely began from a misunderstanding of the Swiss grading system, where 6 was the highest score instead of the lowest as in other European countries, making his top marks look like failures. Another source of confusion came from his first attempt at the Zurich Polytechnic entrance exam, which he did fail due to weak scores in languages, history and biology, but not math or physics. Einstein himself later clarified that he had never failed mathematics. The Great Wall of China can be seen from space. This
That's obviously a lie. I mean, it can't be seen from space, but with the satellite, you can see it from space, technically. But you can't just go to space and see it, though. But with a satellite, you can.
myth began in 1754 when English writer William Stukeley claimed
1754. Nobody's been to space before. How do you?
the
At
wall
that
was
time.
visible from the moon, and it was later popularized in a 1932 Ripley's Believe It or Not illustration that repeated the false claim. The wall is too narrow and blends with the landscape, making it almost invisible even from low Earth orbit. Astronauts have confirmed this, noting that highways, airports, and dams are far easier to spot with the naked eye. The idea persisted
Really?
because of the wall's immense length and early speculation, but in reality, only special cameras or satellite imaging can detect parts of it under perfect conditions. Columbus discovered America. When
Oh, duh, he did. He never should discover that shit. He was just, the terrorist that found
Christopher Columbus
America.
arrived in 1492, the continents were already inhabited by millions of indigenous peoples who had
Yep.
lived there for thousands of years. Norse
Yep.
explorers like Leif Erikson had reached North America, likely in present-day Canada, around the year 1000, centuries before Columbus. His voyages were limited to the Caribbean and parts of Central and South America. He never set foot on the mainland of the modern United States.
Didn't he end up in like Spain or Colombia or something like that?
Columbus also believed he had reached islands near Asia, calling the locals Indians, unaware he had encountered an entire separate continent. Rats spread the Black Death.
So rats never spread the plague to start it off?
Recent research from the University of Oslo suggests the plague that killed a third of Europe in the 14th century was more likely spread by human fleas and lice, not rats.
What type of fleas?
14th century was more likely spread by human fleas and lice.
I can understand how you get lice, but how the hell you get fleas? I get it was a dirty era, but fleas?
Not rats. When scientists compared models of how the disease spread, the pattern linked to human parasites matched historical death rates far better than the rat-based model. This means the real culprits were likely human-to-human transmission through parasites, not the rodents long blamed for one of history's deadliest pandemics.
So the parasite will be on somebody and it'll be dirty and pass it off to somebody else.
The samurai
Oof.
hated guns. When Portuguese traders introduced firearms to Japan in 1543, samurai in fact quickly adopted and mastered them. Japanese gunsmiths began producing their own matchlock guns, improving the designs and creating tactics far ahead of their time. Warlords like Oda Nobunaga used firearms to great success by defeating traditional cavalry with organized gun formations. Firearms later declined during the Edo period, not because samurai rejected them, but because the Tokugawa government restricted their use to prevent rebellion during an era of peace. The idea of samurai rejecting guns came centuries later, popularized by films like The Last Samurai. In reality, samurai used firearms
Hold on,
as tools
Tom.
of war and integrated them into their training. The Salem witch
Wait, so you mean to tell me they wasn't actually burning women back in the day?
trials in colonial Massachusetts are often associated with the image of a woman being burned at the stake. They took place from February 1692 to May 1693.
Only 1 year? I thought they was doing this for a couple of years.
Accused 200 people of witchcraft, convicted 30 and
Damn.
executed 20, but
So out of the 200, 30 of them got convicted and they only killed 20. So what the hell they do with the other 10?
none were burned. Executions were by hanging or pressing with heavy stones. The idea of burning witches comes from European practices in countries like Germany, Scotland, and France, which later generations mistakenly applied to Salem. Roman vomitoriums. The common myth portrays the vomitorium as a special room in Roman villas where the wealthy would go to purge themselves during a banquet feast so they could eat more. In reality, Romans did not vomit between courses. Some maybe did, but at least not in dedicated rooms. The so-called vomitorium was a passageway in amphitheaters and stadiums. Its name comes from the Latin vomere, meaning to spew forth, describing how the passageways efficiently emptied large crowds, like the Colosseum's 50,000 spectators, in about 15 minutes. The
Oh, so it was just like a little walkthrough.
misconception arose from later writers misinterpreting the term, and today vomitorium still refers to crowd exit passageways in modern venues. Jesus' birthday. Most
He wasn't born on
scholars agree that the exact date of Jesus' birth between 6 and 4 BC is
Oh, the year.
unknown.
They didn't
The
get the year
Gospels of
right.
Matthew and Luke, the only accounts of his birth, do not give a month or season, though Luke notes shepherds were tending flocks at night, which is unlikely in December. Some traditions calculate his birth by assuming the Annunciation, the Archangel Gabriel's visit to Mary, occurred on March 25th, placing his birth 9 months later on December 25th. Other traditions celebrate it on January 6th in the Eastern Orthodox Church or in spring or fall. December 25th likely originated from early Christians and Emperor Constantine to replace pagan festivals like Sol Invictus and Saturnalia, which celebrated the winter solstice and the return of the sun to encourage conversion. The Great Chicago Fire of 1871 killed over 300 people and left many homeless, but the famous story of Mrs. O'Leary's cow knocking over a lantern was fabricated by a newspaper seeking a sensational tale.
So how did the Great Fire of Chicago actually
Mrs.
happen then?
O'Leary, being poor, Irish, Catholic, and a woman, made an easy scapegoat. The
Yeah. 4. She got 4 things on her.
true cause of the fire remains unknown. Historians suggest possibilities like neighborhood boys with a cigarette, or even a meteor shower igniting fire.
It wasn't a meteor shower. If a meteor shower got that close to the town, that shit would have exploded. Not caught on fire. That shit would have exploded.
Fires across the area. The humans thought the Earth was flat.
Didn't Christopher Columbus think the Earth was flat? That's how he ended up accidentally finding the other side of the globe because he thought he could just go like in a straight line.
Myth. Educated people have known the Earth is round since ancient Greece. Philosophers like Pythagoras and Aristotle provided evidence for a spherical planet in the 4th century BC, and Eratosthenes even calculated its circumference with remarkable accuracy in the 3rd century BC. The idea that medieval Europeans thought the Earth was flat is a myth, popularized in the 17th and 19th centuries to depict a supposed conflict between science and religion. Christopher Columbus also did not set sail to prove the Earth was round. His crew feared the journey would take longer than expected because they underestimated the planet's size.
So he didn't. Oh, I thought he thought. So I thought Christopher Columbus thought the Earth was flat. That's why he went the long way around.
The Cleopatra was Egyptian myth comes
Oh yeah, she married into the Egyptian world, didn't
from the
she?
fact that she was the last ruler of Egypt and embraced many Egyptian customs to rule effectively. But she was of Macedonian Greek ancestry from the Ptolemaic dynasty. The idea of her as a seductive Egyptian beauty is also exaggerated, fueled by Roman propaganda and later Hollywood. Her influence
Oh, so you saying she wasn't bad? You tell me Cleopatra was some chop shit?
came from intelligence, charisma, and political skill, not physical appearance. The story that she died from a snake bite is also unproven. Vincent van Gogh's ear. The story that Van Gogh cut off his entire ear in
Nah, I thought he cut off like the top part, like the tip of his ear.
a fit of madness is untrue. He severed only the lower part of his left earlobe during
Yeah,
a
the
period
tip.
of severe psychological distress. The act may
But I feel like a lot of depictions of Van Gogh, they got that right though. Like it is not the whole ear, it's just the tip of his ear.
have been triggered by a heated argument with his friend Paul Gauguin, financial pressure and fear of abandonment. People in the Middle Ages only lived to 30.
Nah, because you be on this channel, they be living to like 40, 50. Some of them lived to like 70, 80. It
The
was
concept
crazy.
of life expectancy in ancient and medieval times is misunderstood. While average life expectancy at birth was around 30 to 35 due to high infant and child mortality, those who survived childhood often lived well into their 50s or 60s. The
See?
low average reflects deaths in infancy, early childhood, and the dangers of childbirth, not imminent death after reaching adulthood. Skeletal evidence and historical records show many adults lived long lives, and since life expectancy is an average, the lifespan metric is heavily distorted by early deaths. The idea that Galileo was imprisoned for his heliocentric model is a myth. Nicolaus Copernicus published his heliocentric theory
I
in
have no idea what this was.
1543,
I must be
way
missing out on
before
knowledge.
Galileo, without punishment. Galileo's real conflict arose because he offended Pope Urban, who had been funding his research, by publicly mocking him and not following the church's required procedures to validate the model. The issue was personal and political, not purely scientific. He was found guilty by the Inquisition and sentenced to house arrest, not punishment or a dungeon. Corsets were torture devices.
Nah,
While extreme tight lacing could be harmful, most corsets back then were everyday supportive garments, similar to a modern bra. They helped shape fashionable silhouettes, supported the back, and provided comfort and confidence. Only a
Yep.
small number of wealthy women wore them for extreme waist reduction. For most, corsets were practical clothing rather than instruments of pain. Paul Revere's Midnight Ride on April 18, 1775
so you telling me he didn't warn us the British was coming?
was part of a coordinated effort by local patriots in the province of Massachusetts Bay to warn Minutemen of the approaching British army before the battles of Lexington.
Oh, I got that right. Oh, my history. Oh my God, history knowledge deep. I didn't think that was the right one, but I knew it. I could just tell by the image. I was like, that's the British is coming.
And Concord. But Revere was not the only rider. William Dawes and several others also carried warnings.
I mean, that's kind of obvious, though. I mean, obviously, one person is not telling the entire army, hey, somebody's coming in time.
Contrary to popular myth, Revere also didn't shout, "The British are coming!" Most colonists still considered themselves British, so the phrase would have been confusing. His ride relied on secrecy, using a network of riders, signal guns, and church bells to spread the alarm. The fame of Revere's ride comes mainly from Washington Irving's 1861 poem, which exaggerated his role as a lone hero. The Allies fought the Nazis to save Jews from the start. The idea that Nazis were universally opposed from the start because of their treatment of Jewish people is misleading.
Oh yeah, Japan was on their side.
Anti-Semitism was widespread in the West before World War II, and Allied intervention was not initially motivated by a desire to stop the Holocaust. The scale of Nazi atrocities only became fully recognized once the genocide was revealed. The Holocaust succeeded in part because many countries refused to accept Jewish refugees, reflecting the broader indifference and prejudice of the time. The Library of Alexandria's single fire. The Library of Alexandria was not destroyed in a single catastrophic fire. Its decline happened gradually over centuries due to neglect, political conflict, and multiple events. Julius Caesar's fire in 48 BC damaged nearby ships and warehouses, but likely spared the main library. Later, the Serapeum Library, part of the Great Library of Alexandria, was destroyed by a Christian mob in 391 AD, and the Arab conquest in 642 AD may have caused further losses. The library's demise was a slow process. The idea that Gandhi single-handedly freed India is a myth. While his
Super
non-violent
myth.
movement mobilized millions and was crucial, independence in 1947 resulted from multiple factors. The contributions of other leaders like Nehru and Subhas Chandra Bose, armed movements such as the Indian National Army, economic and political strain on Britain after World War II, and events like the 1946 Royal Indian Navy mutiny. The story of Emperor Nero fiddling while Rome burned never happened. The Great Fire of Rome in 64 AD destroyed much of the city, but the violin didn't exist until nearly 1,000 years later. Historical accounts by Tacitus and others, written decades after Nero's death, combine fact with rumor. Tacitus.
So wait, hold on. That still doesn't add up though. If the violin was made 1,000 years after the event, how did writers write him with the violin decades after the fire? That means somebody still wrote of a violin before the violin was made. I think he just
Records
messed
that
up.
Nero wasn't even in Rome when the fire began. He returned to organize relief efforts, opened his palaces to shelter the homeless, and arranged food supplies. The image of Nero playing music while the city burned likely arose as a metaphor for neglect, shaped by later writers who viewed him as a symbol of corruption and decadence. Propaganda turned a complex ruler into a cartoon villain. The pyramids were built by slaves. Archaeological evidence shows
Wasn't the pyramids built by slaves and civilians, like just normal workers, like farmers and stuff?
that the pyramids were constructed by paid, skilled workers, farmers and seasonable laborers,
Yeah.
not enslaved people. Excavations have uncovered a workers' village near the pyramids, complete with dormitories, bakeries and even a hospital, indicating an organized community. The builders' tombs, found close to the pyramids, contained food offerings, but no treasures or signs of mummification, suggesting they were honored workers rather than slaves. Studies of their remains show they ate meat regularly and suffered from injuries consistent with heavy labor, not abuse. The myth
True.
likely came from Greek historian Herodotus, who visited Egypt long after the pyramids were built and was later reinforced by Hollywood. How and whether humans alone built them remains another debate.
That was history's biggest lies you still don't believe. Some of them I already knew, some of them I had learned about, and some of them opened my eyes to it. Let me know what like changed for y'all. With that being said, I'll see y'all later.
You don't own my soul. Get your hands off of me. Wanna rest my bones when I am free. You can't control my heart. Bones when I am free. You don't own my soul. Get your hands off of me. Wanna rest my bones when I am free. You can't control my heart. Bones when I am free. You don't own my soul. Get your hands off of me. Wanna rest my